Hi folks, welcome to Thursday's I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast. No Jimmy Hutton today. Jimmy's out pounding the asphalt in his chariot for the public. I've got Stuart Lockhead with me and myself, Norris Stewart.
Hello there.
We're going to go with FMQs, which we think will segue into the power grab from the point of view of Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and no doubt mention the legality of this government's stance on negotiations. Mm-hmm. So we'll kick off with FMQs. Stuart, what did you think?
Well, it was a grown-up FMQs for a change. There was no, you couldn't really say there was any attack. Ruth Davidson was remarkably cooperative.
Sorry, you mean Baroness Davidson?
Sorry, Baroness Davidson. Of course, she prefers not to be known as that, but you're right. We had, first of all, the report, the 3-weekly review of the, well, partial lockdown or the restrictions because of the pandemic. What did we discover?
Well, we discovered that we weren't going to open up anymore. And in actual fact, we discovered we're going to be more restricted.
In fact, I've got these items here. We're going to line up with England on maximum 6 from 2 households, indoors and out. We've got 20 people allowed at funerals, weddings, wakes, but the limit of 6 in pubs and restaurants. But the new thing there is not going to, and I can think of somebody who's not going to be happy, is Billy. If you're in a pub, you're going to have to wear a mask if you get out your seat to go to the toilet, get in and out. So that's, and the staff have got to wear masks as well. So that could cause a bit of a problem, eh?
Well, I haven't been anywhere where the staff weren't wearing masks.
Right.
I have to say, every restaurant I've been in, and I've been in, I think, about 4 now, they wore masks.
So that's good.
And people tended to wear masks if they got up from the table.
I don't have a great deal of experience, but my experience over the last couple of months even, is that corner shops, convenience stores have not been applying the mask wearing. Whoever's behind the counter doesn't wear it. People are going in and out, not wearing it. You can, even if you're not inside, you can see them going in and out, not wearing them. However, I'm not going to clipe on anybody in particular.
Okay.
We've got, of course, the news about the app.
The new app, which I've downloaded.
Yes, me too. I got the news about midnight last night, so.
And makes very plain, when you download the app, it runs through all the things it doesn't want from you.
Well, you don't sign up for it in any way at all. You don't have to.
No, it's not going to let me show it.
No, you don't have to. You don't. Unlike in every single app you've ever installed on your phone up to now, you don't have to sign up with an email account or anything.
No.
It does. So it doesn't know who you are.
Yeah.
And it's just a case of, if you do, well, you could, if you know how Bluetooth works. If you don't know how Bluetooth works, it works within about 10 yards or something. And it's if you're got what's it called, Protect Scotland app in your phone and working, if you're sat in a bus, on a train, even in a pub, and somebody that you were near but you don't know their name, you don't know their address or contact, if they tested positive, they'll be able to get hold of you and say, look, you've been near somebody that's infected, you better have a test. That's all it's about.
There's about, 4 or 5 stages to go through, which is just click button stuff. As you say, you don't have to type anything in.
It's easier than any app I've ever, to get going, than any other app that I've ever used.
So she announced that during FMQs, the uptake of the app had reached 250,000, 250,000.
You're right there.
So let's hope it reaches a huge percentage. But it does step you through. In fact, I think it might be the first thing it tells you is that they're not taking any of your information. So that was quite good. Apart from that, most of it, it was all about track and trace and mental health.
Oh, back to the back to FMQs. I thought we were still on the app. Let me see. I'm having trouble reading this. I may have to go and put the light on. These should be the right specs. Today is World Suicide Prevention Day, and I may need to apologise for something I said on Twitter to Dr. Richard Simpson. That was perhaps a wee bit strong in what I said. I didn't realise it was World Suicide Prevention today. But I just in case he's listening and watching, you never know, you might get to hear about it. What else did we hear about? Teachers. That was a bit of a, that question was by Patrick Harvey. He was worried about teachers having to do the cleaning that cleaners normally do when you've got children with difficulties. There'll be children in some schools that are soiling themselves, as they say, and teachers are having to clean up after them instead of cleaners.
Was that not? I'm sorry. I think what he meant was cleaning up to comply with COVID, because they're having to wipe down desks every time they're touched and door handles and things like that.
Is it? We don't need to fall out about this, but it was with addition. It was in particular with children with additional support needs. So I'm reading too much into that. Go on, shoot me. Shoot me. I'm the messenger.
I think you are.
Possibly.
But I'm not. I mean, I think we can safely say 3 of the questions today basically ignored the last 6 months. You know, I mean, Ruth Davidson was not guilty of that. You know, she talked about track and trace and how's it working and why is it working the way it's working, all legitimate questions. And then she gave the new app a boost. So, I mean, she was the grown up in the room today, unusually. Richard Leonard then went on to talk about a 2-year-old recommendations from an inquiry 2 years ago, as if nothing had happened in the last 6 months.
That's true.
You know, as if it was business as usual. If they start that, we're going to spend the whole time with the First Minister standing up and going, excuse me, where were you when the pandemic was on? And that kind of applies to Patrick Harvey's question.
Right. Well, yeah. Who was it that seemed to, yes, I think we've got to pick on Willie Rennie in a moment.
Well, go right ahead, because his question was another one that totally ignored the fact that we've been in the midst of a pandemic.
It was worse than that. We were preparing for recovery. What was he under for the last 6 months? Did he really think it was all going to be over now?
Well, he obviously wasn't listening to the First Minister every day.
No, he's obviously been listening to Radio 4 and Boris Johnson, who you know, who's a different world. I'd rather not mention him. I mean,
I find that quite reprehensible. You know,
I did. I thought it made me angry. I you know, blame Boris is what I put in the margin alongside that. We were preparing for recovery. No, we weren't. Only if you were an idiot following Boris's instructions.
Was it Willie, or was it a Tory that asked the question about? Oh no, it was Willie, wasn't it? It was about the difficulty of. Well, no. Why weren't they policing people coming in from abroad more completely? Because that question she's answered 74,000 times now. You're only testing 5% of people coming into the country from abroad. Yes, but as I told you the last 14 times you asked this question, we were testing 20% or 450 people, whichever was the largest number. We are actually testing over 600 people. So we're doing better than we said we would do. Will you ask me the same question next week? And should I just put the answer on cards at the front of the room?
We had Graham Simpson there before I left. It's still going. No, it has finished. Before I left the FMQs on the TV, he asked the same question about quarantine, and he demanded to know why it wasn't at 100% that people were being contacted. And the First Minister said, look, 100% of the people that come into this country are contacted because they have to give an email account on the form they fill in. Well, I presume while they're aboard the plane. Only a percentage is then, a sample percentage is contacted, followed up by phone.
And that was the second time she answered that question, because she told Willie that as well earlier. I mean, the big thing for the Tories at the moment is they're not getting any money from the airline companies for their next election. So they've got to push it. The only way you could police this is if you actually locked people in jails or even hotels. If you said to everybody, right, okay, you come to Scotland. This happens in Australia, by the way. And we've got a hotel room for you. You're there for 14 days and you pay for it. That's what happens in Australia.
Well, it didn't work though, of course, because they in Victoria, this is where it all broke out of. In the quarantine hotels in Melbourne, they had private security guarding them. We have since discovered there was sexual contact between the private security and some of the inmates of these quarantined people. They were exchanging cigarettes and food and all kinds of things, and bodily fluids even. No wonder it got out.
Well, unless the Tories are prepared to ask the British government to pay for it, which they won't be, that's the only next step. You either have to show a certain amount of trust in people doing the right thing, or you lock them up in some form or other. That's it. And will the Tories support the Scottish government jailing everybody that comes to Scotland for 2 weeks?
Well, I don't know if you saw you know that there was a protest at Holyrood just over a week ago now, isn't it? Was it? Was it last Friday?
No, it was last Friday. The Looney Tune protest.
Okay, the Looney Tune protest, right. And nobody was arrested. Nobody was fined. The police just turned up to take a look at it. They had a similar protest in Melbourne. The police turned up with what looked like something like 10 police on horses, huge numbers, and they were fighting with the protesters to get them into handcuffs.
Well, I'm quite sure that didn't add to the spread of any coronavirus.
I don't know.
I don't know. Anything else out of FMQs that was of interest?
No, I haven't highlighted anything. None of my highlighted pens and that. No, sorry. That's me finished.
No. So effectively, all the Diddy wee parties are interested in is mental health, and all the big parties looking for money are interested in is aviation.
Aye, well, there
That
you go.
kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
It summed up. I mean, it was a bit disappointing that some restrictions have gone more restricted. Well, they've reversed some of their restrictions, and they have cancelled moving to phase 4.
Well, will we move on now? Will we move on to the power grab that apparently the BBC and the mainstream media just have decided to ignore?
Yeah, I think I'd better tell the listeners and viewers my experience of searching on The Guardian. I do a lot of research in the mornings here before this show, believe it or not, guys. You'd be surprised. And I searched long, all over the place for various, extra news and commentators' reactions to this power grab by Boris and Dominic Cummings. It's the bill, the internal market bill, which we have discovered 2 days ago, that basically they're taking dictatorial powers over everything, not just of the devolved governments, not just over EU laws, but they're taking the authority to do ignore almost any law they like, and they're taking, and yet, where is the brouhaha from the media in England?
Well, the other thing that struck me thinking about this yesterday was, with the emergency powers they have in place for the pandemic, it allows them basically to make laws without going to Parliament to ask about it. What could they do to the devolved administrations in the next 2 or 3 months while these laws still stand. They could totally eviscerate us. And if you don't believe us, I have a clip. Here's Adam Price of the Welsh nationalists. Oh, wait a minute.
Plaid Cymru.
Plaid Cymru.
I've lived in Wales, you see.
Here you go.
Well, the Westminster government has shown utter contempt for our democracy, for the people and the Welsh nation as a whole. And, you know, it is absolutely incredible that here we have now a Westminster government that isn't just a rogue state in international law, it seems, but it's a rogue state within this United Kingdom as well, ignoring the democratically expressed wishes of the Welsh people, not just in one referendum, but in two, and undermining any notion of respect for our democracy. And it's clear now that there's only one way forward for Wales, and that's independence. We cannot submit to this Westminster government. We have to have the confidence and self-belief in our own nation and take that ultimate step forward and become an independent country.
So there you go. Now, we discovered today, according to Jerry Hassan, that 51% of Labour voters in Wales would vote for independence. Now, you couldn't quite say the same. In that same article, Jerry Hassan reckons it's got to 40% of Labour voters in Scotland would vote for independence. And he seemed to suggest that figure was actually growing. So, hey. But you're right, we've got to come back to this power grab. I'll just finish what I was saying about the research. So I went to The Guardian, expecting to find something about this total dictatorial power grab. And I started screen grabbing the pages on the monitor. I got to page 5 before I found anything at all in The Guardian talking about this power grab, the internal market bill. They don't seem to, either they don't care or they haven't noticed.
They don't care because it doesn't affect England.
It does affect England.
It doesn't, not in the sense that England is losing any power. England, in as much as the Westminster government is the English government, is gaining power from the power grab.
They're taking powers, not just from the devolved regions, they're taking powers to ignore any existing law. That's far bigger than just powers from the devolved people. Anyway, you can leave it at that. I'm express my frustration with The Guardian. I'm very angry at The Guardian and the rest of the media for ignoring this.
How have they taken powers to ignore any law?
That's what's in the internal market bill. I don't know what...
They're the government. They can make new laws to ignore old laws.
Yes, and this is what they're doing, but they're taking it...
But they can do that because they're the government.
Yeah, because they're doing it in this bill, so they don't need to go to Parliament every time.
Well, this is the part about ministers being able to make the changes.
Yeah, and to be able to ignore
the
law. So I'm just amazed that
I missed that.
It's not the headlines everywhere.
I think lots of people have missed it. I'm not, when I read it, it didn't jump out at me, that's for sure.
Well, it was in the leaked document from 2 days ago, which we saw, which was obviously a photograph, because it wasn't even a scan, because it was, it's when you photograph a document, it goes a bit grey and it was a bit wobbly.
This was a guy outside.
No, I think that's a different issue, that one.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'll dig it out for us so we can
have a look. Okay.
Absolutely.
But the gist of it is that the DUP, their legal guy was interviewed last night. He's quite happy with this throwing international law to the wind because it suits their political stance. Obviously, they weren't happy about the border being created down the Irish Sea. So they're going to support this.
Well,
so that only leaves Scotland and Wales.
But that raises a point I brought into the discussion yesterday, which is the two articles in the Belfast newsletter, which is the unionist supporting newspaper in Belfast, and they referenced the possibility of threats of violence. That's how I'm going to put it. Disruption, which obviously in an Irish context is something to really worry about. I think it's in Martin Kettle's article, the one article that was in The Guardian, which is headlined, "This Brexit bill finally buries the Conservative Party of Law and Order," so which was we knew. I can't find the quote, but the suggestion is that Boris Johnson has been frightened by unwritten, unspoken threats of violence from the loyalists in Northern Ireland if they don't get this border down the Irish Sea stopped. And there is a part of the protocol, the Northern Ireland Protocol includes a codicil that says if there is threats to peace and security. So
what will happen?
Well, they can't. Then it won't be illegal if they.
All right, so they'll withdraw from it.
They can withdraw from that protocol if there is a threat to peace and security. These are my words, not the quote, because I couldn't find the quote, but it's close to that.
Well, I noticed that today's meeting with the EU kicking off with what exactly they think they're playing at. The EU want clarity, which will be interesting because we as voters can't get clarity. And I also note that the Democrats in America did exactly what I predicted they would do, and they've said no trade deal if there's a threat to the Good Friday Agreement.
Yep, so there's hardly anybody, only part of Trump's base would support Trump, and there's no guarantee that Trump will do it, even if he comes back into power. A good deal either.
I never ever thought that Trump would jump at a deal with the UK. I mean, the UK is a tiny wee blimp with a much bigger presence than its power base should give it, and he'll use it to play hardball. Why would he do otherwise?
Well, I mean, the UK is a it's an aircraft carrier with American nuclear weapons, because the so-called independent nuclear deterrent cannot be fired if the codes aren't sent from Washington.
Oh, no, that doesn't apply anymore, because the UK government doesn't anymore have to adhere to international treaties. So they can do what they want with the nuclear weapons.
Yeah, are you sure they know how to fire them without the codes from the Pentagon?
What I'm saying is, I wonder how the American generals are feeling today when they're thinking, we've got an agreement with the UK over these nukes.
I think.
Well, maybe you haven't got an agreement with the UK. Maybe Dominic will get out the wrong side of the bed.
You could be right, but I suspect they've actually got full control. The expression is they've got the key.
I would be very surprised if they didn't. I would be very surprised if they didn't. I think all we do is pay for them so we can pretend that we've got some nuclear deterrent. I would be very surprised if we could hit that button without America standing on our shoulder.
I suspect so.
Well, it looks like Welsh independence is on the up. If this disintegrates the agreement on Northern Ireland, will Northern Ireland be going for a border poll? And could Scotland be the only devolved nation that's not allowed to vote on independence because we're the only one that looks like a certainty to actually want it?
Well, did you notice that Alistair Carmichael, the proven liar, Lib Dem MP, stood up in the Commons yesterday and said, look, if you're going to break, this was to Boris, if you're going to break the law on an international treaty, that's a risk to the Union, because the SNP will hold a referendum and claim that they don't need to permission from a Section 30 order.
And it's only going to be on a tiny wee bit.
Oh, aye, it's only specific.
Yeah, on a tiny wee specific bit of the Treaty of Union.
Yeah, not a big bit.
The bit about the Treaty of Union.
Well, there's another thing. If it's about the Treaty of Union, but it's only a very little bit about that. Yes, we can just just dissolve it, as Peter A. Bell would ask for.
Well, I'm looking forward to China at the UN saying we took a leaf out of Britain's book and we're just going to ignore the Hong Kong Agreement.
There you go.
Spain with Gibraltar, Argentina with the Falklands, and the list goes on and on and on.
I'm sure there are probably some Caribbean ones as well. It's a very hodgepodge there of, you know, did you realize, I discovered the other day that you're probably aware that France treats all its colonies as part of France.
Yeah.
Even if you live in New Caledonia in the Pacific, it's still part of France. And so do the Netherlands. They've got some islands in the Caribbean, Curacao, Aruba, etc. They're regarded as part of the Netherlands as well.
Whereas the Isle of Man is an independent state.
It's a crown dependency.
Oh, well.
We have got problems with Linda Bauld, Professor Linda Bauld.
Ah, right. Yeah, this is about her not being happy with one aspect of the trace and track, which is basically, do we have the capacity in the labs? Our politicians failed to take it down to what the problem was. They just decided she had a problem with it all. But it's specifically about lab capacity.
But the headline was, there could be disorder on the streets. This was the bit that got the headline going. She sat at the committee, I didn't see it. Yeah, social unrest as some people tired of the lockdowns. And I don't know if somebody put the words in her mouth. I haven't, it's hard to tell.
Bit difficult. Well, I didn't watch it, so.
But it was brought up at First Minister's questions, presumably by Willie Rennie, I would imagine. He would be the sort of guy to do it. And of course, the First Minister said straight away, oh, I have great respect for Professor Bauld. She's one of the experts we've got here in Scotland. I've got a piece here from Professor John Robertson, who analyses the media in Scotland on behalf of the Yes movement. And so he looked at any research into social unrest as a result of previous plagues and pandemics. And the only research you could find was it's called COVID-19 and the potential consequences for social stability. And they looked at the plagues of about 1330, and the Spanish flu, about 2018 or 19. However, he reckons that we don't have the history of violent uprisings here. He claims, Professor Robertson claims that even the poll tax unrest in Scotland, there was no violence. Nobody was arrested. Well, people were arrested, wasn't in fact Tommy Sheridan.
Nobody died.
Tommy Sheridan, yeah, nobody died. And also the Battle of George Square, 1918, there were no fatalities either, in spite of tanks being deployed.
Oh, maybe because. I don't see it being in the Scottish psyche to riot because you're on an enforced holiday. They might riot because they've got to work 7 days a week, but I can't see us rioting because we've basically off work, sitting on our backside watching.
It remains an outstanding in the. It's not been resolved, not outstanding in its other sense. Question: when we think about the riots they've had over the years in most English cities and in Cardiff, in Liverpool, etc., and that these didn't spill over the border into Scotland. Do you remember? Because
we really can't be bothered going out in the street and doing it. It's just, nah, it's not that
I
important.
don't have the answer. I just agree with Professor.
I can't.
that we-
I think the last time I saw anything that looked like it might turn into violence was when the far right were kettled on the high street during the referendum. Do you remember a couple of them broke out and were running up and down the street trying to hit people? And they basically just got laughed back into their small group.
I have been present in
Okay,
Waterloo
okay.
Place when the far right were kettled. Yes, I have.
This was in the high street. That's the last time I can remember anything. And that was just lunatics being lunatics. You know, the usual. So, anything else pop out? You'd asked me to dig out a clip.
Yes, we've got Richard Murphy, he's one of these people that posts something pro-independent and pro a currency for Scotland, Scottish currency, pro modern monetary theory. He's an English tax expert, chartered accountant, but he's taken up the cause of Scottish independence. We also have a quite famous Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis. I'm doing my best to be accurate. He too has turned up in Scotland a few times. And he also is in favor of modern monetary theory. You can't be actually be in favor of it. It's a description of something that's actually going on. So but we'll leave it.
Yeah.
I'll not go into
Nobody's admitting it.
Nobody's admitting it. That's what they're doing, operating in all the main economies of the world at the moment. But so Yanis Varoufakis, I don't know why he was asked about it, but I believe he might have been on BBC last night, and he more or less was saying Scotland needs to get its own currency. Now, you cannot really have independence without independence. Oh, that's the wrong one, is it?
Yeah, it's,
Let the man say it himself.
oh dear, it's not a clip, it's just his face.
Oh yes, that's not the clip. Sorry about that.
Oops. Sorry, folks.
Not to worry. But you probably recognise the man's face. But if you go and look it up, it was on the 9 last night, BBC Scotland's news show. Apparently, which BBC Scotland's only got 7,500 viewers. It's a very expensive channel to run, isn't it?
But the point he was making was that he believes Scotland isn't truly independent without its own currency.
And he also says in the clip that we can't play that if countries like Estonia and Ireland can be successful, why can't Scotland?
So I think maybe we'll leave you with that high note, folks.
Yes, and we're missing our pal Jimmy today, and I hope he has a good day on the...
I hope he makes lots of money.
Yes, I hope so.
It wasn't terribly busy yesterday by all accounts.
No.
But hopefully we'll work out a way to get him back on. But he's doing long days at the moment.
What we should do is figure out a way out to help him get more business so we can tell people where he is and we can flag him down.
Get him to fly a flag on the taxi.
Well, of course, we're not live.
He can do interviews. He can take interviews in the taxi for us.
Edinburgh taxi. Okay. Thanks for having me, Norrie.
Cheers, Stuart. I'm Norrie Stewart, and thanks for watching, folks. We'll catch up with you again on Hat Friday tomorrow. Hopefully, Jimmy will be here with his bonnet, but we'll see. Cheers for now, folks.